I may quote one sentence from Dr. Guru Nitya Chaitanya. When my work progresses, I feel elate and satisfied. If it is obstructed or delayed, I feel darkness and negative. In such a moments, I will struggle against those persons or those obstacles, and I will raise my fingertips against them. That is I. Thank you. Today, it is with great pleasure that I present this humble venture for the ardent lovers and promoters of homeopathy and the members of IFPH. I can say from the light of my experience that nobody can reap success in homeopathy unless he travels through the right path. Today, I am delivering some points that are certain bits. None of the words I am using here with an hour is not from my own. Each words are written in the homeopathic literature by the legends of homeopaths. While hearing me for 1 hour, you feel bored. This is a boring class. Maybe. On the next day also, I think that it is reserved for me. The second day, you will change your ideas, and if the God in the form of IFPH allow me to deliver the second part, you will correct your word as the class is something different. I am very much confident in that point. So please humble request to attend these my words, and after that we can discuss or evaluate the class on the next day it onwards. That is my request. Okay, I may proceed. Which are the organ systems whose disturbance produces a generalized effect? The mind, the disturbance of which can produce far-reaching effort on the heart, lungs, and almost every single part of the body. For example, when we are frightened, there is palpitation, breathlessness, sweating, trembling, increased frequency of urination, etc. The nervous system. First point is mind. Second point, the nervous system. Disorder of which produces various type of sensations, pains, sensitiveness, etc. in various organs and parts of the body. Third point, the endocrine system. We know that disturbance of the endocrine system, increase or decrease of hormones, can produce changes in various parts of the body. For example, the growth hormone can produce changes in the bones. The male and female hormones produce changes like puberty, menopause, etc. Cortisol can also produce several changes in the system. Then the next point is the immunological system. The disturbance of this function can result in allergic and autoimmune disorders, as well as the tendency to recurrent infections in several parts of the body. So, the body and mind. The mind and body are not two separate entities, but they form an indivisible whole, inseparable, in fact, but distinguishable by mind for easy understanding. The mind and body are not two separate entities, but they are form an indivisible whole, inseparable, in fact, but distinguishable by mind for easy understanding. In every fully proved drug picture, there are corporeal symptoms along with alteration of thoughts, feelings, affections, and volitions, intellect, memory, etc. In natural diseases, the physical disturbances often found associated with their mental parts. There is no gap between the body and mind. I mean, tell you once more. In natural diseases, the physical disturbances often found associated with their mental parts. There is no gap between body and mind. Now, we can compare psychiatry with homeopathy. In psychiatry, diseases are classified into functional, neurosis, and psychosis. But in homeopathy, this corresponds to psora, syphilis, and psychosis. In aphorism 2:11 from the organon, it reads as, this holds good so such an extent that the state of the disposition of the patient chiefly determines the selection of the homeopathic remedy as being a decidedly characteristic symptom which can least of all remaining concealed from the accurately observing physician. Organ. This hold good to such an extent that the state of the disposition of the patient chiefly determines the selection of homeopathic remedy as being is a decidedly characteristic symptom which can least of all remains concealed from the accurately observing physician. So, accurately observing physician. Look at the words. We say mental symptoms are most difficult to get. And Hanuman says, it can least of all remain concealed. So, concealed from whom?
Physician.
Correct.
That's the problem.
From the accurately observing physician.
Yes.
The word is observing. If you are able to observe, no patient can hide his mental state from you.
Yes.
The physician is an observer. Mental state has to be found mainly by observation and not by inquiry. You have to experience the experience of the patient. You have to experience the experience of the patient.
Perceive.
This is the art of case taking, especially with the mental symptoms.
Yeah.
In aphorism 2:12, the creator of therapeutic agents has also had particular regards to this main feature of all diseases, the alert state of the disposition and mind.
Altered.
Altered. So, sorry. The altered state of the disposition and mind. For there is no powerful medicinal substance in the world which does not very notably alter the state of disposition and mind in the healthy individual who tests it, and every medicine does so in a different manner.
Yeah.
So, in that aphorism, we have already read that each remedy produces a mental state in all provers,
Yes.
which is peculiar to that remedy. Whoever be the prover, aconite will produce violence in the mind. Stramonium will produce terror, and pulsatilla will produce a tearful disposition.
Yes.
Hanuman writes of aconite that it cannot be given to a calm person. So, the second thing, a remedy produced that is common to all provers is a mental state. So, that word should be clearly placed. The second thing is a remedy produced that is commonly to all provers. That is mental state. So, mental state is not mental symptoms.
Yes.
Mental state versus mental symptoms. The mental state of a man represents the state of his vital force. The mental state of a man represents the state of his vital force. In healthy condition of an individual, the spiritual vital force rules the material body without any limitations and in a harmonious way. When an individual falls ill, it is his mental state that is deranged first, and the physical changes follows. That is the importance of mental state. A homeopath who does not understand the value of mental symptoms fails to understand homeopathic philosophy. Hence, he will not progress in practice. That's a true fact. I may add certain points. A remedy that covers the mental state and general symptoms of a patient has got a greater possibility of curing than the one that covers the particulars.
Sure.
Yes. A remedy that covers the mental state and general symptoms of a patient has got a greater possibility of curing than the one that covers the particulars. If a remedy covers the particulars without covering the generals and mentals, it is bound to fail.
Palliation.
Then the physician should always remember, when the medicine chosen on mental symptoms is administered, the physical symptoms along with the mental symptoms disappear and the man is cured. Potentized remedies have dynamic effects only. Then, what happens at the time of drug pull? During the drug proving, the drug shown their action through the mind and the body, so that in every proved drug picture, there are alterations of thought, feelings, affections, volitions, act of willing or choosing or making a decision, intellect, memory, etc., along with the physical symptoms. Similarly, when a man is sick, his mind and body are affected, producing mental and physical symptoms. Then, what are the importance of mental states? It is therefore, homeopathic physician is taught to pay attention to the mental state of man, which will guide him for the choice of the medicine rather than the physical symptoms. It is therefore, homeopathic physician is taught to pay attention to the mental state of man, which will guide him for the choice of the medicine rather than the physical symptoms.
Of a remedy.
Yes.
Choice of a remedy.
If two medicines have produced similar mental symptoms, then the other points like miasm, thermal affinity, disposition, etc., will help to differentiate for the selection of the medicine. During the proving, each drug produces mental symptoms peculiar to itself. Similarly, during illness, every disease produces mental symptoms peculiar to itself. Diseases and medicines are to be studied alike. During drug proving, each drug produces mental symptoms peculiar to itself. Similarly, during illness, every disease produces mental symptoms peculiar to itself. Diseases and medicines are to be studied alike. So, from the mental state. From the mental state itself, we can decide whether the individual is in need of a drug. From the mental state itself, we can decide whether the individual is in need of a drug. This is the primary part of my class. And today, I am introducing certain mental states of our beloved drugs. Or frequently we are using the drugs. But I am presenting each drug, the cardinal point of the mental state of that drug. Maybe one sentence or two sentences. That's all. About 50 drugs I wish to deliver with you, or share with you. Mental state of Aeschylus fever. Aeschylus. Extremely irritability is a very general state from which ramify a great many mental symptoms. Extremely irritability is the very general state from which ramify a great many mental symptoms of Aeschylus. Then Ailanthus, second medicine. Cannot concentrate the mind in any mental effort. Ailanthus patient cannot concentrate the mind in any mental effort. Cannot answer questions correctly. As if in a semi-conscious state. And finally, he goes into complete unconsciousness. That is ailanthus, mental state of ailanthus. Then alloman. Alloman we are using frequently. The remedy should be proved in the higher potencies upon sensitive persons in order that the mental state may be brought out. It is alloman. Then, compared to mental state of alumina, the mood may be mild and cheerful. Alumina patients' mood may be mild and cheerful, peevish and fretful, sad and constantly mourning. Sometimes his mental state is a little improved and his mood changes into a quiet, placid state. And again, he goes into fear and apprehensiveness. That is the mental state of alumina. The mood may be mild and cheerful, peevish and fretful, sad and constantly mourning. Sometimes his mental state is a little improved and his mood changes into a quiet, placid state. And again, he goes into fear and apprehensiveness. Then the mental state of alumina force. Spasmodic laughter, maniacal actions, wildly mirthful, moods changes rapidly and mental states alternates. Loathing of life, extremely obstinate. That is alumina force. Then what about umbragation? A prematurely old patient with the nervous mental state. A prematurely old patient with the nervous mental state. The quivering, trembling, and excitement in one who was once a strong, vigorous man. That is umbragation. In olden days, that medicine is used more frequently. A prematurely old patient with the nervous mental state, the quivering, trembling, and excitement is one who was once a strong, vigorous man. Umbragation. Then our ending group. The mental state and constitution of ending group. Along with such mental states, the physical condition seemed to strike to the stomach as it were. The mental state and constitution of ending growth, along with such mental states, the physical condition seems to strike to the stomach as it were. Then epismen. The mental state is the delirium, which comes on in serious forms of brain affections in children. The mental symptoms of a piece are very striking. And the most striking thing throughout the mental stage is the aggravation from heat and from a warm room. So the mental state is the delirium which comes on in serious forms of brain affections in children. It is EPIS. Then argentamate. Argentamate is aroused by confusion, just such as is aroused by the emotions, just such as the loss of balance from fear, from anger, from fright, from disturbance of the mind. Argentamate is aroused by confusion, just such as is aroused by the emotions, just such as the loss of balance from fear, from fright, from anger, from disturbance of the mind. He takes on mental excitement, rage, and a state in which he talks nonsense with great rapidity. He takes on the mental excitement, rage, and a state in which he talks nonsense with great rapidity. Argentamate. Then argentanatrica. This state of mind progresses until there is a general state of weakness with trembling, paralysis, numbness, disturbed functions, palpitations, throbbing all over the body with the mental state. This state of mind progresses until there is a general state of weakness with trembling, paralysis, numbness, disturbed functions, palpitation, throbbing all over the body with the mental state. Then the mental state of arnica. He does not want to be approached. He does not wish to be touched on account of the great bodily soreness. The pain and soreness, that soreness, he is afraid of it. He does not want to be approached. He does not wish to be touched on account of the great bodily soreness. It is arnica. The sore, bruised feeling all over the body. And the mental state would decide in favor of arnica against any medicine. So the mental state of arsenic alcohol. Fear is a strong element in the mental state. Fear to be alone. Fear something is going to injure him when he is alone. Fear something is going to injure him when he is alone. Full of horror, he dreads solitude and wants company. That is Arsal, the present day's hero. Mental state of arsenic iodide. Sadness, even to despair, discontent, mental exertion increases many of his symptoms. Mental exertion increases many of his symptoms. Arsenic. There is marked mental weakness, fear of insanity, fear of misfortune, fear of people, and he is generally a timid patient. Arsenic. Then, okay.
Salba.
Arsenic. are sided. Sadness, even to despair, discontent, mental exertion increases many of his symptoms. There is marked mental weakness, fear of insanity, of misfortune, of people, and he is generally timid. Then Oromet. In case of Oromet, iritis, great disturbance of the whole visual apparatus. Oromet. Remember, the mental state, the mercurial and syphilitic states, the gouty tendency, and the complaints that belongs to joints. Remember the cardiac disturbances. Iritis, great disturbance of the whole visual apparatus. Remember the mental state, the mercurial and syphilitic states, the gouty tendency, and the complaints that belongs to joints. Remember the cardiac disturbances. The students always thinking about Oromet, constantly dwelling on commit suicide, double will, such mental symptoms. That way they are understanding the Oromet. But these points also should be noted. Orum self. Next medicine is Orum self. Hysterical and in a hurried state of mind. Hysterical and in a hurried state of mind. At first mental activity, later dullness, then imbecility. There are disturbances from somebody. Hysterical and in a hurried state of mind. At the first mental activity, later dullness and imbecility. Orum self. Mental state of orum self. Our beloved Baptisia. The mental state of Baptisia. I have never seen the Baptisia mental state associated with a bright red appearance. Baptisia case, with that mental state where there is feeling all over the bed to get the pieces together. To get the pieces together. That lower form of mental state is associated with blood decomposition, with a duskiness, with a dark appearance of the skin and of the mucous membrane. Dark appearance of the skin and mucous membrane. That is Baptisia mental state. Our familiar belladonna. The mental state is associated with the scarlet fever and with cerebrospinal meningitis. The mental state is associated with the scarlet fever and with the cerebrospinal meningitis. Now we can go through borax. I have noticed in women who had periods of insanity, whose nervous trouble and mental state would keep up until 11 p.m. I have noticed in women who had periods of insanity, whose nervous trouble and mental state would keep up until 11 p.m. It is borax. Then our bryonia. The mental state of bryonia is usually relieved from cool air he wants to the windows open. Not only is there mental sluggishness, but there is a slowing down of his sensations. His whole state is benumbed. Early in the case, he was able to keep still and found that he was better from keeping still, and that the mental state was better from keeping still, and that the anxious restlessness increased the more he moved, until finally a reaction comes and he is obliged to move. That is the mental state. We are thinking about the aggravation of bryonia from the least emotion. Very clearly, the legends described us, early in the case he was able to keep still and found that he was better from keeping still, and that the mental state was better from keeping still, and that the anxious restlessness increased the more he moved, until finally a reaction comes and he is obliged to move. That is bryonia. Then, before Rana, the mental state is especially found under Bareita curve in adults who have never developed beyond childhood, who have always remained children. Before Rana, Bareita curve. Thereby, the mental state has not developed, the child has not grown into a man or woman in intellectual attainments or wisdom, and remains as a whimpering, screaming child. This before Rana. I think that 1 hour is over, even though some points also, some medicines. Mental state of Cantheris. The mental state may be one of confusion. Cantheris. It has strange ideas. Thoughts run riot, or the state may be one of frenzy. Then furious rage and especially sexual frenzy. So the Cantheris, the mental state may be one of confusion, has strange ideas, thoughts run riot, or the state may be one of frenzy, furious rage, and especially sexual frenzy. Then mental state of cactus. The mental state is that of fear and distress because of the intensity of the suffering. Cactus. Constructing feeling. Okay? So the mental state is that of fear and distress because of the intensity of the suffering. In case of caladium, the prover did not understand how to describe and report symptoms in case of caladium. This led to the use of caladium for a good many different kinds of mental affections, loss of memory, where there is that vague state of mind. That is caladium. Then our calcarea curve. All the mind symptoms represents calcarea as in a state of great weakness, inability to prolong mental operations. That is analogous to the mental state found in hysteria or a great state of nervous excitement. That is calcarea curve. Then camphor. In the mental state, there is anxiety and extreme fear. Fear of persons, of strange spheres, of the dark. The dark is filled with imaginary specters. That is camphor. Then cantharis. When taken internally, it proceeds almost immediately to attack the urinary tract and establish a uremic state, which brings about the mental symptoms. The local inflammatory condition comes on with great rapidity, and this brings the patient down violently, sick in the great hurry. Unconsciousness and delirium in the mental stage of cantharis. Thirst with aversion to all fluids. Thirst with aversion to all fluids. That is, the craving of the mouth and throat are antagonized by the mental state. Then, what about capsic? In the mental state, there is no more striking thing than this symptom of homesickness. Capsic, mental state of capsicum. The mental state is there is a no more striking symptom than the homesickness. Then herbovage. The whole mental state, like the physical, both of them are very slow. The whole mental state, like the physical, is slow in case of herbovage. Then causticum, the mental state indicates. In the adult, there will be trembling, paralytic weakness, and the mental state is sometimes pain in the nerves. Causticum. Then in case of chamomilla, every region that is taken up, every part that is studied, bring into the mental state of the patient. The awful pain that she is having drive her to frenzy, and this frenzy, this oversensitiveness to pain, is coupled with the mental state. Toothache that is entirely absent in the daytime. As soon as it comes night and the patient gets into the warm bed, then this shooting, tearing pain begin with the irritability, oversensitiveness to pain, the mental state, hot head, you have the chamomilla toothache. It is the case of chamomilla. It continues as much redness when the mental state is present. In case of chamomilla, when the mental state is present, much redness can be noted. The chamomilla mental state determines when you are to give in the sore throat. Oversensitiveness to pain, with all the pains and complaints, and the mental state, the irritability, the snappish mental state at a menstrual period. In case of chamomilla. Then chelidonium. brooding over some sort of trouble generally runs through the mental state. Brooding over some sort of trouble generally runs through the mental state. With the liver troubles, slowing down of the mental state, inability to the mind to work, sluggishness of the mind, then inability to think, inability to meditate, then the pulse also becomes slow in case of chelidonia. The mental state of China, such is the China cachexia, and with this view, the mental state will scarcely be a surprise to you. Not clearly defined. Mental state of Simsifuga, there is a terrible mental state that alternates with the physical states. Simsifuga. The rheumatism get better, but the mental state becomes worse. In case of clematis, one almost constant mental state is that he fears to be alone, yet dreads company. Clematis, an almost constant mental state. That is, he fears to be alone, yet dreads company. Then, the remedy seems to fit the psychotic constitution in its mental state and its generous. Clematis, psychotic. Then, cophia. The nervous system is in a fret, and such a mental state as described come on with after pains. Cophia, after pains. Extremely sensitive to pain. Cries out, sees visions, hears all sorts of noises in case of cophia. Then conium. When in a state of considerable vigor, if suddenly deprived, the woman or the man take on a state of trembling weakness, inability to stand any mental effort, and inability to put the attention upon things said by the others. Then cyclamic, alterations of moods, is a striking feature of the mental state of cyclam. In case of Dulcamara, the mental state is restlessness, then irritable, even confused, with difficulty in finding the right word when speaking. There may be an impatient desire for something which, when obtained, is not wanted after all. There is a compelling urge to keep constantly to move. Or hyoscyamus. Hyoscyamus have another effect in this peculiar mental state. When considering hyoscyamus in its mental state, it is well to realize that it seldom has much fever in its insanity. That is hyoscyamus. Then ignatia. Others will come back with violent headaches. Others with the mental state and confusion. Others with all the hysterical manifestations. While I am giving the lectures about materia media, I give much importance to each and every medicines for the sensations. sensation, location, modality, and content. In such a manner, I am studying and giving the classes. There, Ignatia describes so many sensations. Then, state of fire, the mental state. The mental state of this patient is that of excitement, anxiety, impulse, melancholy. He wants to do something, wants to hurry. He has impulse to kill. That is ayada. Mental state. That mental state is impulse to kill. Then, our Kali-bike. The mental state of typical Kali-bike influenza patients is one of mild discouragement. They have difficulty in thinking. Any attempt at mental effort is almost impossible. Kali-bike. And they are rather discouraged and hopeless. They feel very weak, tired, and worried, and like to be left in peace. That is Kali-bike, mental state. Then Kali-carb. The slightest effort of thought or excitement, and they get into a peculiar state of mental confusion. In that the mental state, they get the fear that they are going inside. Kali-carb. Then Kali-force. Their mental state is one of great despondency. Then creosote. The mental state is described as nervous, excitable, never satisfied with tearful overtones. The restlessness is marked in creosote, wants to be constantly on the move. It is very irritable, even pain. Any emotional upset is accompanied by pulsation all over the body. Memory is impaired in case of creosote. Then our Ledam Hall subject is adopt to be cross, morose, discontented with everybody. Everything is disagreeable. That point is much important. Everything is disagreeable. Ledam Hall. Then our Merksol. The mind is weak and tremulous. Memory and willpower are impaired. He is apt to forget names of people, of streets, of places, etc. All times feels hurried and does things in a great haste. The mental state may be one of extreme indifference, of homesickness, of suicidal or any murderous intent. That is Merksol. Then our Moscus. It is not generally known that the morbid sensations and functions corresponds with the mental state of the individual. When the functions and tissue symptoms are hysterical or erratic, the mental state will be found to be correspondingly hysterical. Then natron garb. We know that it is for a remedy for otalgia with a sharp, darting, piercing pain. When the mental state, the chilliness, and the other generals are present. In case of Natramore, the mental state where ignatia temporarily benefits the symptoms but does not cure its chronic Natramore should be given. Then the nitric acid. The whole mental state is better than riding in a carriage. The next mosquito, it is strange state of almost bewilderment The patient complains of all sorts of strange sensations all over. Next most. They cannot remember things properly, have a horrible feeling of weakness. They also complain of a constant faint, sickly sort of feeling and an overpowering of sense of sleepiness. In case of Naxomica, the mental state is varied, but they all show oversensitiveness, irritable, touchy, sensitive conditions. This will be accompanied with the mental state, excitable, oversensitiveness to medicines. Our phosphoric acid, there is weakness, lack of reaction, state of stupor with impotency, then mental prostration. From the beginning, the mental state has been most marked, and finally come on the muscular weakness, which increases until the jaw drops, and it seems that the patient must be die of exhaustion. Then plumbament, the mental state, while he is slow to think, then yet in the slowing thinking, he does a great amount of thinking. He makes an effort to think. I know each of the listeners are getting bored while saying such talks. Today, I expressed about more than 50 drugs, mental states only. Even though today's class feels boring, the next day it will make up. I am confident because that time, I think time is over. If you are allowing me, I will continue, but it is better to get a break here because the other portion or the second part will go as a chain. So I am taking a rest during here, and if you are allowing, you can present your ideas or your opinion about this class. But